Hello, everybody. Nathan Davis here for Chasing Night Shadows. We're having a little bit of a glitch here. Of course, we have to start every show like that. Um, but we're going to have Nicole. What's her last name? What's your first?
Ferro.
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. Sorry. I just want to make sure I'm saying it right. I don't want to mess up
It's
here.
okay.
She is a paranormal investigator. Where are you based out of, Nicole?
Well, I live in Newport Richey, Florida, so over by Tampa.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you were just in that area, Gene, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Ah. You don't look like you got any sun there, man. What happened? Anyway,
Ever do. I have built-in sunblock.
I can tell. All right. Well, Nicole, I just want to ask, what got you into paranormal investigation?
Well, I was always interested in it. I did have some weird kind of things happen to me as I was a kid. My father actually he had a sibling pass away when he was about 16 years old. And of course, around that time was when the Vietnam War was happening. And I used to see a man in my room in a military uniform. And of course, I never, knew who he was. And later on in life, I found out that that was one of my father's siblings. And then, of course, as you grow up, they're always like, there's nobody there, nothing's going on. I was also a very heavy sleepwalker.
Because
And
I'm going
then
to just
as
sit
I
down and listen to
was an adult,
silence.
I was gifted a car,
Well, that's almost
and it
home
was
anyway.
an older lady.
Gene,
And
Gene, she's talking.
somehow I started having weird things happening in my
Huh?
house, and it kind of catapulted me back into the paranormal.
Okay. So the man in the military outfit, that was, he was related to you?
Yeah, it was my dad's brother,
Okay.
but he
And
had passed away when my dad was 16, so I never met him. I didn't know who he was, but we found out later on that it was my Uncle Mike.
wow. And so, how often did he visit you?
I can't say really for definite, but he was the one thing that I remember very vividly. I remember him, standing at the bottom of my bed, and it was always kind of freaky, like, who is this man? Why is he here? But of course, your parents are like, nobody's there, you're okay, when you go in your room screaming, and there's somebody there, and they don't, nobody's in your room, just go back to sleep. It was a nightmare of some sort. But it must have been, quite a few times because I still remember it very well.
Wow. And did he ever say anything to you, or
Nope, he just stood there. It really wasn't. I don't know if it was, meant to not scare me or, how it was. He was just kind of there.
hmm. And so later on is when you got into the paranormal investigating side of
Yeah,
things.
as an adult, I was around 30, maybe 33 or so. My daughter, it was before my daughter, right before my daughter, or no, my daughter was alive. It was right after. She was about 3 years old when we started having things happening. I had a house built in Fort Lauderdale, and it was built to suit, and there was nothing on the property. They built a whole neighborhood there. So there was nothing there but woods prior to us living there, prior to the neighborhood. And at that time, I haven't really did much investigating. There was a place in Pembroke Pines, which was the only place at the time that I had actually gone to try to investigate with my friend. And it was an old insane asylum, like poor farm kind of place in Pembroke Pines, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got home, I started having weird things happening at the house. And I had two Rottweilers and a very small Chiweenie kind of dog, half Chihuahua, very small dog, about 5 pounds, maybe full grown. And the two Rotties would stand up and like hair on end, teeth out, growling, facing the front door. And it was like, geez, what's going on? And because the house was built to suit and everything, it was kind of like, maybe there's raccoons out in the garbage, or maybe there's a cat or something. So you go look out the door, and of course nothing was there. The garbage cans weren't knocked over. Nothing was happening. And then one day I finally like put two and two together. I was like, well, I'll just bust out my flip phone and see what I can catch on the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I faced the camera, and my daughter was awake. So I was like, trying to make her stand behind me. But as a, 2.5, 3-year-old, she's just standing there like, what's going on?
Right.
And I actually got on film at the time, or on film, recorded on the phone. And I was like, if you're friendly, you mean no harm, you can stay here. And after I watched what I recorded, I saw, and a lot of people are probably going to nag me for this, but it was just a ball of light appeared, and it ran down the side of the wall, around back of me, back around the right side of me, and then up the stairs. And once it went up the stairs, the dogs went and laid down, and, regular night, resumed. It was like nothing happened at that point. So whatever was by the door was what was annoying them. And I said it to, the middle of the air, if you're friendly and if you're not going to cause any harm, we can coexist, blah, blah, blah kind of stuff. And then a couple of weeks later, my stepfather, who happens to be or was about 20 years older than my mother, he's in his 80s, and his friend's mother passed away, so she was in her late 90s, and gifted us a car. It was like a Mazda 3, but like a 1980-something model. Mm-hmm. And we got the car, and the car was sitting in a driveway, and of course I was cleaning it up to sell it, so taking all her things out, there were books, and there was a blue cushion that she used to sit on, I'm assuming to see over the steering wheel. So that was there too. Some canes, some books, some cleaning up items, things like that were still in the car, and I was cleaning them up, putting them in the garage, and that's where they stayed, and I really didn't think anything of it. And probably a week after I cleaned it up, I was laying in bed, and like I said, I had already started having some weird things happening in the house, mm-hmm. and this kind of amplified it. But I'd be laying in bed, and when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have like bouts of sleep paralysis, and they kept happening 3 days in a row. And, you wake up 9:30, whatever, and you feel like something's sitting on top of you, and you can't get a word out. I would just say to myself, Nicole, come on, just, move your pinky, move your pinky nail or your pinky toe. Right. Just say one word, get anything out, anything you could. And then, as a last resort, you just start praying. And that was the only thing that seemed to make it go away and release the situation. And then I was having other things happening, like I have a couple chairs that are by the side of the bed. And I would hear like the fluttering of like a big paperback book. And to be honest, I don't read very often. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of weird to hear that, but laying in bed in the pitch dark, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, well, what's that noise? And then hear it again. And then finally like sit up. And when I sat up, the armoire that was in front of my bed where my TV was inside of it. Now, granted, yes, there was a fan on and the air conditioning's on and the doors were always open, but it was something that was always like that and never made any noise. But that night, it made like a little thump, like the door hit the wall. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's weird. Almost like me sitting up startled something and made that noise. And then another thing that prominently sticks out in my head is that my daughter, one night I kept feeling my bed moving, like something was underneath my bed, and I finally got like the courage to look. And I looked over off the side of the bed, and I could see my daughter's legs like sticking out from underneath the bed. Mm-hmm. I'm like, Kayla, what are you doing? It's 3:00 in the morning. Like, why are you up? Mom, I'm playing hide and seek. And I'm like, who are you playing hide and seek with? It's 3:00 in the morning. And she told me, Mom, she looks a lot like you, but older. I was like, well, who is it? And she said, Mom, her name's Mary Ann. And I'm like, wow, I don't know anybody named Mary Ann. And at the time, I didn't know anybody either, the name Mary Ann. I was like, well, is she nice? And my daughter was like, yeah, Mom, she's really nice. And I was just like, well, tell her, okay, it's time for you to go to bed. Tell Mary Ann, you need to go to bed. And she was like, oh, man, like, do I have to? And I made her go back to her room, came back in and went to sleep. And a couple of days later, I was signing over the title because I sold the car, and the lady's name was Mary Ann Syrup. And it was just like a shocking kind of revelation, like, crap, this is who my daughter's playing with.
Right.
And it was just, one of those weird kind of things that happened.
So,
but I also had a friend of mine that used to, if I was going away for a couple of days, he'd come over and he'd watch the house for me to let the dogs out kind of thing. And I never realized it and never really spoke to him about it, but he finally told me that he was sensitive. And when he was the last time that he watched my house when I got home, he was outside by the garage door with his things packed. And he told me he'd never stepped foot in my house again. And I'm thinking, geez, I live here. What are you talking about? And he said, there's something in your house. And I'm like, okay. So he goes, first of all, there's two things. He said, there's an old lady that keeps yelling at me, the blue cushion belongs in the car. Put the blue cushion back in the car. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's really freaking weird because, like, nobody knew about the blue cushion. I don't even think this kid even knew about the car to begin with.
Right.
And I said, wow, can you tell her to, like, that I can't put the blue cushion back in the car because we sold the car and, she's passed on. So it was really weird that he came up with the blue cushion and then tells me that she protects me and my daughter, but she doesn't protect my daughter's father, who also lived with us at the time. And he said, there's something else that lives by your front door, and I'm afraid that Wayne's going to die. And I was like, what? Like, are you kidding? Because I'd already caught that thing on video. And it was like, my daughter's father used to sit by the front door to have his cigarettes and stuff in the morning. Because he smoked, but, made him smoke outside because I don't smoke and I didn't want that in the house.
Right.
But it was kind of odd that he's like, I'm afraid he's going to die. And then I started talking to Wayne after, and he's like, yeah, I meant to tell you, but in the spare room at night, something keeps pulling the sheets off of me at night. And he's like, I just tell it to go away and leave me alone. And that's pretty much it as far as the stuff that, he was claiming was happening to him. But I was having the sleep paralysis too. So it was like all the things together was like, wow, what is going on here? And finally I ended up saging and blessing my own house and everything seemed to go away. But that's kind of what really brought me back to the paranormal and kind of made me want to find answers and, make sure that I wasn't, losing my mind, that these things were actually happening.
Right. Now, with the woman, Mary Ann, do you think that she was attached to the objects from the car, and that's why she was hanging around?
I think so, mainly because, driving the car was probably, a hard thing for her to do at her age. Driving the car, the anxiety that maybe she would have felt being in the car. And her getaway was to read the books. And the books, were in the car and then into my house. Later on, I did find one of her canes underneath the footboard part of the bed. But, I can't discredit the fact that my daughter might have played with it and brought it upstairs.
Right.
But to find some of her, and those are very personal items, she would be, to have to use a cane, and it was probably something that she used every day.
Right.
Anytime she went to the store, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think that she came with the car, and I think she might have been attracted to us because it was a mother-daughter kind of situation, and, the amount of time that you spend with your kids. So I think she might have really enjoyed having a kid around at her age, and if, she was in her 90s, it was probably a lot easier for her to move around and get around as, an entity or, a spirit compared to what she could have done as, as a living person.
Right.
So, for her, I would assume that she would have protected, my daughter before myself. And maybe she watched over her to make sure that whatever the other more, I don't want to say evil, but I don't know what it was. It definitely wasn't there to be good or nice. So, I mean, I'm sure she would have protected my daughter more than anybody else. And I'm glad that she was there, to be able to protect my daughter from something I didn't even know was happening.
Well, do you think that the entity that was, causing the paralysis and the other things that were going on with you, do you think that it was a demonic or evil presence? What do you kind of feel that was? And do you think that Marianne more than likely was interjecting because she saw the threat there?
And yeah, in a way, I'm not going to jump to say that it's demonic or anything, because I didn't have any, I'm not going to say there's any kind of possession or, there was no funky smells or, anything like that. And as long as I've been doing paranormal, I would only state or claim that I think I came into contact with a demon once out of all the places I've been to. I've never felt so threatened by anything. But what that thing, whatever it was, I think it was trying to steal my energy in some way. Mm-hmm. I'll say it's malevolent. It didn't mean good. If it could have got, any further than what it did, then I would say yeah. But I think it was an entity that followed me home from the insane asylum I was going to.
Okay.
But I don't know where else it could have come from. Mm-hmm. It definitely didn't mean, it didn't wish us well. So the fact that two entities came generally right around the same time is kind of amazing to me. And I kind of figure maybe my energy was attracting them because I was so fresh and new coming back into the paranormal.
Right, and it seems like from your, past with seeing your uncle, that more than likely shows that you have some sort of sensitivity that they are attracted to. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't claim to be psychic or anything like that.
Right.
But I've noticed that since I've been involved in the paranormal now about 12 years, maybe 13 years, since I've been involved in it, I am able at this point to walk into a building and feel when there's things nearby. I can walk into a room and feel a hot spot. That kind of stuff. I'm a little bit more sensitive to some things, but a little desensitized to other things.
Right.
So the fact that I'm able to do that now, and I couldn't do that in the beginning, it does show that there is some sort of sensitivity to my energy.
Okay. Now, and so as long as you've been in this, what is the most profound experience that you've had in the paranormal through your investigations?
I don't think I have anything that really stands out to me. The one thing that I remember a lot for some reason when I go to certain places, there's a place, I think it was called the Gulfstream Hotel in West Palm Beach, Florida. Mm-hmm. We were there with quite a few people in War Party Paranormal. We were there as guests. And it was kind of cool because whatever entity we were involved with absolutely would not speak as long as there was a male in the room. So it would only speak to women. And when we were there, there was probably, I think 4 of us were in the room for about 45 minutes. And sometimes, the entities actually, I don't know, they touch you in a way where like you're almost in tears talking to them. And it's whether it's their energy or yours, somehow their story ends up hitting you.
Mm-hmm.
This particular entity we talked to for a while, but the information she was giving us was like from the 1920s. She died and she fell down an elevator shaft in the hotel. But when we walked in, the first thing that she said as an EVP was mommy, like she was looking for her mom, or as her mom just walked into the room, that kind of energy that she felt was more like her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, you don't really think about what's going on, but for, a little kid to be looking for their mom, and as soon as you walk in the room, they think you're mommy or something, to that nature, it hits kind of close to home as a parent.
Right.
And, I ended up having this like 45-minute conversation with her where she was, telling us her favorite color, and I had a little teddy bear that, like the Boo Bear, I had that with me. I was like, oh, would you like to hold my teddy bear? And, just kind of having a conversation with somebody that you just seen as like a lost kid.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fairly emotional.
I can imagine, especially being a parent. I mean, and feeling or knowing that tragedy that happened to that child, that's a horrible thing to happen to anybody, but especially a child.
Yep.
Now, were you doing like live EVPs to communicate with her, and were you able to hear her responses audibly on the EVPs?
Yeah, we were doing more or less like burst sessions. For me, a lot of people go in and they turn their, recorders on and they play them, have them recording all night. But it's kind of hard for me when I'm reviewing evidence, and I think a lot of people will agree with me that, it's hard to listen to. You've got how many recorders and how many videos, and it's a lot of stuff to try to review whatever it is that you might have caught that night. And, everything isn't so easy to see. So you might play it one time and you don't see it or hear it, that kind of stuff. So usually when I go into a building now, I like to have I always try to get the FLIR. I love the FLIR.
Mm-hmm.
But between that and EVP burst and say the Ovilus or something like that, I might have three, things going all at once. But I do try to make it easy for myself.
Right.
And do like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, and then listen to it when I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I listen to it and I get an answer, it'll kind of propel me in a way to want to keep going. Because I mean, how many times do you go in a building and you get absolutely nothing for hours, and it's like you're kind of like, oh, it's a dead night. If it's one of those active locations, you're like, oh, something's not gelling tonight, or it's just not active tonight. So, I don't want to waste that much time looking for something that might or might not be there, and then it just gets kind of boring when you're reviewing as well. So I think, honestly, the reviewing part is the hardest part for me. As far as being an investigator, the reviewing is the hardest part. I mean, going there, getting what you get, the feelings that you get when you're there, all that's great. But if you don't have, the validation, it kind of ruins it for you, because you can't present it to anybody with no, actual proof. And everybody's so quick to tell you that whatever you caught isn't real, or, oh, it's lens flare, or whatever kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It seems like they try to tear you apart before actually thinking that, oh, she did 5, photos in 5 seconds, or, I just think everybody's very quick to discredit what you're doing, unless, it's obviously something that happens to them.
Right, and there's a similarity with cryptozoology as well. I mean, as I've gone on doing audio recording and stuff, it's the same thing. I try to make it easy on myself because it is tedious if you're going through 8 hours of stuff. And
Exactly.
you do run into the same thing with people on the cryptozoological side, where if they have an experience, they're very easy to dismiss it, and that's something I guess is a crossover between the two. I've noticed it with both ends. It's like, okay, well, it's all about, what was going on at the time, and if you don't have context to it, then it is easy to dismiss something. And I think that's something like with, I don't know if it's the same with paranormal groups, but there's a very divisive atmosphere with cryptozoology. There's, pockets, groups, cliques. They all kind of run
But
together and they all bash one another. And I don't fully understand that. It's like, well, from the outside perspective, the general public looks at us as all nuts, and yet you're using their tactics against somebody that pretty much agrees with you on most stuff, except maybe this minor thing over here. So I don't understand why we have to butt heads. I think, constructive criticism is fine, because to look at things and to actually have a constructive view is great. But criticism on its own, I think, is just, it's really divisive, and it creates tension and, animosity towards one another, because, you're not really looking at it through an objective eye. So,
and I think it's probably the same on both ends. And I think in some ways it's like people, they're so quick to discredit it, like you said, even though, we've been doing it a long time, so you kind of try to find ways to make it easier and better for yourself. And I personally, I don't post anything out there, whether, what social media it's on, unless it's something that I feel very confident about.
right.
As far as what I present to everybody else being what I feel is, like concrete, evidence.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like people want to get that extra jab in, or, want to tell you. I don't know if it's from like a jealousy standpoint, or, it's very hard sometimes when it's in writing and text and comments and things like that for the whole, attitude to come through. Sometimes it might, come through a different way. You'll read it how it wasn't intended. But I mean, I figure, these things happen to a lot of people, and everybody, there's a lot of people into this stuff now, which it wasn't quite so much back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, I feel like that, and that's why I try to really, unless it's something I'm really shocked about or whatever, I don't try to put too much out there that I did catch. Like, we were in Savannah, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago, and I was in total and utter shock. I got 3 anomalies in one photograph, and we were standing, we're in what they claim is the most haunted city in the United States, and I took a photo of the Mercer House. Now, the Mercer House is where they filmed the movie by Clint Eastwood, A Midnight, oh my gosh, I think it's called In the Midnight of Garden of Good and Evil, or something like that.
So Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, yeah.
Yes, that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so they filmed the movie there, but the owner of the house, which a lot of the movie was loosely based on what actually happened,
right.
The last person that owned the house, remodeled the house, happened to be a very, he was like a house flipper in Georgia before they were called house flippers. And he ended up falling in love with the house and the property, so he ended up staying there. But I don't know if the story goes as he murdered or possibly murdered his mate or his partner. And then 9 years, like to the day or to the month, he died in the house mysteriously. And in this photograph, I'm sitting there. Patrick Burns was doing a ghost tour in Savannah. That's what he does now. So we took his ghost tour. So we were there, and it's one of like close to the very end of the tour. So he plays like his EVPs and photos and things like that on like a large iPad kind of thing. So he's out there playing his stuff, and the one like EVP he has, he said he got from outside of the house because the woman that owns the house now happens to be the man that died mysteriously, his sister, and she doesn't like them doing the paranormal tours and things like that, including the house.
Mm-hmm.
So we were sitting on a bench outside. And my daughter's like, "Oh, I can see the I don't know, like the drapes moving or something in the upstairs." And so I turned around and I just started snapping some pictures of the house. So right in front of the front door, you can see like this odd kind of anomaly, and it's in the shape of a human and looks like a woman, like in a long white nightgown. Now, why she would be there, I don't know. I don't know if she owned the house prior to him. I don't know who these people would be.
Right.
But then inside the square where we were standing, where I was taking the photo, right underneath the light, you know, like the old Sears photographs where they would pose people and like the man would be sitting down and the wife would be behind him with her hands kind of crisscrossed on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two men. There's a man with a really heavy mustache and a checkerboard shirt, and then you can see another humanoid type of figure behind him. They're very faint and hard to see, but once you put them on a computer, you can decipher the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that might be the owner of the house that died mysteriously and the boyfriend behind him that was actually shot in the house. So in that same time, like I said, we're standing there at a paranormal tour that's playing their voices, a gunshot, and then you can hear the panicked voice, you know, "Are you okay?" And I forgot the guy's name. But, and then you can also see this woman standing in front of the house, and they're just like oddly shaped little white kind of outlining of humanoid figures. So it's just kind of odd, and I was, you know, really shocked that that was there, because to get one entity in a photo is one thing, but three in one photo,
Right.
I was like, wow, this is crazy, you know. So I was a little hesitant about putting it out because, one, like I said, the two men were kind of very hard to figure out, but the more I looked at the picture, the more I could see them plain as day.
Right.
So I sent it actually to Patrick Burns, and he said that he can definitely see the woman in front of the house, but the other ones he didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you know, the one is, you know, validation. And a lot of people, I didn't get a whole lot of comments about that photo, but I know what I saw.
Right.
So I thought that was really a phenomenal catch, especially just being outside in, you know, where the public would be. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's a really interesting photo. Do you have it posted on, where do you have that photo?
I have it on my Facebook page somewhere, but I mean, I can send you it
Okay.
when we get off the
Okay, I'd
call
like to
if
see
you
that.
want to.
All right, and just to pause you right there, we're going to go ahead and take a break here real quick. Do a little video that was taken by the Monkey Man. That's our disgruntled unknown cryptid that's tired of Bigfoot getting all the publicity. He was able to meet Bob Gimlin at the latest Fact or Fiction Fest. I told him to go out there and you know, meet with him because he had some words for him. So I will let Monkey Man go ahead and tell you his little story and what his encounter with Bob Gimlin. So here we go. All right, well, that was the Monkey Man interviewing Bob Gimlin at the Fact or Fiction Fest in Indianapolis, Indiana. We will also have some more towards the end of the show of Monkey Man's tour of the Fact or Fiction Fest and his interviews with various people there, some of which gave him odd looks. But, you know, hey, go figure. All right, so we're back with Nicole here. All right, so we talked about Georgia and your encounter there with the three apparitions, and yeah, send me that picture when you get off here. And So you also have this thing now that's the paranormal. It's for cancer.
Paranormal Kicks Cancer.
Okay.
So when I got involved, I started doing events, running events with my boyfriend, and we do these events, and it's called Paranormal Kicks Cancer. What we do is they're paranormal based events with the paranormal community, but the proceeds, we're a non for profit, so the proceeds to the tickets, the raffles, the investigations and everything, the proceeds go to kids or go towards granting wishes with kids and families that are battling cancer. So, I mean, as a parent, you think, how hard must it be, to have a kid diagnosed with cancer and then live through all the treatments and all that kind of stuff. But to try to stay with the kids, you still have to get up and go to work and do all that kind of stuff. Getting meals, being together, rides back and forth to the hospital, chemo treatment, stuff like that. Just everyday things are not as easy.
Right.
So we try to, be able to keep, either a parent with the kid, whether we're able to, whatever the kid wants. Like this past weekend, we were in Gallatin, Tennessee, and Doogie from the Tennessee Rave Chasers was a guest speaker that we had. If they're able to, people then get to investigate with their favorite paranormal investigator or whoever we can have coming out that weekend, whoever will volunteer their time. They get to meet and greet their favorite paranormal TV stars. They get to hang out with their friends and us. They get to learn a little bit or a lot about, childhood cancer and what the families go through. But at the end of the events, what we do, the kid this weekend, one of the kids that was with us, we happen to have actually 3 this year, which is not always something that we can do because the kids are sick and a lot of times they can't be around so many people or they can't get there. But Branson, he wanted a bike. So we got him a bike and got him, we were able to raise enough money to get him a new bike as well as fix his old bike and then get some clothes for school. We had another little girl who's only 7 that was battling cancer when she was 3 and 4 years old. She wanted just like little brat dolls and LOL dolls, and I'm still working on some things for her. She loves JoJo Siwa, who was like on one of those Dance Mom shows. So I'm still working on something for her if I can get through to them. And she got to, get her hair cut, a little shopping spree. And then I have another girl that we worked with. She was one of the first recipients that we had, and she was 16 at the time, and she had bone cancer. And they ended up doing she's like the bionic woman now, from like the hips down. She's all titanium skeleton now. But she's now 21 years old, and unfortunately, her cancer has returned now. She has lung cancer. So she's been going through a lot of surgeries and treatments and stuff all over again. And unfortunately, because she's now an adult, a lot of the people that were there as a support system when she was a kid aren't there because she has adult cancer now.
Right.
So back in the day, she wanted to go to... I believe it was Tennessee, actually. She wanted to go to and visit the college that she wanted to go to if she, was able to get well and be there for that. So she got an all-expense-paid trip to the college that she wanted to go to, or the college she wanted to attend at the time. And then this time around, I just kind of concentrated on more things that I thought that she would like Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, different gift cards for dinners and gas cards and things like that. Just, whatever we could do to make them smile for a day.
Right.
Or, just to make their life just a little bit easier is what we're aiming for. It doesn't take a lot to make them happy, and they're all very appreciative of the things that they have or the things that they get.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to get 2 service dogs one year for 2 different kids. Unfortunately, both have passed as of now. One girl, she was our very first recipient, and I think she was 10 years old or 11 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But Buster, they actually named the dog Buster as, for Ghostbusters. And the dog still does, like, he goes to, like, he'll go to hospitals and stuff. He's a service dog, but more like a therapy kind of dog
Like
at this point.
Dog.
And the parents still have him, and unfortunately, we just learned a couple months ago that the father is now going through cancer treatments and things, so he has cancer.
I'm sorry to hear.
I know, it's a crazy thing.
Yeah, and cancer sucks. I've had a number of people in my family that have passed from cancer, and so I know the pain that you go through, just watching somebody go through that kind of pain.
Exactly. And it's affected. I mean, I don't know anybody that it hasn't affected in one way, shape, or form, whether it be that person or that person's kids or that person's parents. I mean, everybody's been affected by it in some way, shape, or form. And although, we would love to have a cure, even if there was one, I don't know if the government's going to allow that to be like a widespread kind of thing or not, because they don't want to lose the money.
Yeah, I think getting Big Pharma out of all of it would probably help, and opening the markets up so that we could actually have a cure.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Now, the one thing is, how would people contribute or get in touch with you, as far as contributing to this cause?
Well, the best way, and it doesn't have to be money. Of course, that always helps. Every penny, literally every penny helps. But the best way at this point for them would be to go on the PKC page, paranormalkickscancer.llc. I believe I sent a link to Jean.
Okay.
If they could go on the page, like the page, and just get involved. In one way, shape, or form, like I said, it's touched everybody in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing, the best that we can. And for these people to have a support system would be the best thing possible. We do run fundraisers throughout the year. And every event that we have, 80% goes back to these families. So we're trying to do it one smile, one child at a time. Mm-hmm. We've also, at this point, we've tried to get into doing even more than just the kids. But, it's not just them that needs help. Like, everybody needs a little bit of help.
Right.
So we do try to run the fundraisers. You can look on the PKC page, get involved in some way, shape, or form. Even if you don't do it through us, we work with the ACCO, the American Childhood Cancer Organization, mm-hmm. and we also work with Base Camp Children's Cancer Foundation. Now, our chapter is in Orlando, which is like 2.5 hours from where we live, but there are nationwide companies and organizations that you can go through, and even if it's just the change, from your couch or, your car or what have you, go if you can to anything and support these kids. I've seen so many times, and it's really not easy anymore. I've been kind of running into roadblocks a lot at this point with all the things that they have in place, because if you don't have an actual child with cancer, they don't let you in the wing anymore just to visit them. And a lot of times, people will, if you see somebody that's sick or a child that's sick, don't look down or look away. Look, they're still a human being. There's still a little kid inside of there that just wants a little bit of attention. And if you can just read a book to them or, help them for just a minute, that's all that they really need.
well, restore their humanity, because I'm sure, when they're going through this, they feel like a part of their humanity's been taken away. Um, and I think
Well,
that's
they look in the mirror. They don't look like they used to. They don't
right.
have their hair, or they're sitting in a hospital bed for months on end. And it's sad. It's tragic where, adults don't want to even look at them.
Right.
And I don't know, if that's a personal issue or what it is. But yeah, like the kid doesn't feel like they're there anymore because people will walk by and not even look at them. And it's like, there's still a little kid in there. Like, to me, it's just, and I don't want to, hurt anybody's feelings or anything, but it's kind of rude,
Yeah, it is. It is. It's very
So
rude.
just, letting them know that you're still there. I mean, we used to be able to go into the hospital and have like a movie and a pizza night kind of thing with the kids. And, it's a lot of fun just to be in there with them like that and watch them enjoy something that, you might go to a movie with your family, or you might, sit down, pop popcorn and watch a movie with your kids, on the couch or whatever. They don't have the availability to do that. And, they can't be at home where they're most comfortable. If we can get them blankets or teddy bears or, I don't know, iPads or music or, bring some sort of normalcy back to their life.
hmm
And that's kind of, what we're aiming for.
Well, what I'll do is when we post this, it'll probably be Thursday. I'll post the recorded version of this interview. I will also put the links in the description so people can get in touch with you to donate in any way, shape, or form to this great cause that you've got going.
It's awesome.
So yeah, I will make sure to do that, and yeah, I definitely think this is a great cause. And I have the stigma goes beyond cancer. I have a daughter that's special needs, and there's a stigma there as well. That
Of
they're not
course,
treated
yeah.
the same, and it's like, well, they're still a kid. She just is not
It's
the same.
sad.
Yeah, and I think it's people don't know how to react. I don't know if that's what it is, but it just seems like they look at it as not being normal, so they don't know how to react to it. And it's like, but if you just treat them like a human being and stop
Exactly.
putting that stigma there, everything's perfectly fine. I mean, people put stigmas to things, and unfortunately, that's part of human nature, I guess. So if anything that helps get rid of those stigmas, I think is a great thing. And anything that gives these kids just joy, like you said, puts a smile on their face, that's awesome. And
Yep, and that's all we're trying to do. That's why it doesn't have to be any big grand gesture. I mean, just acknowledging that they're there and they're still kids. They can sit in their hospital bed and color,
right,
or play music or whatever. Anything, if they're sitting there doing chemo treatments, they're there for 3 or 4 hours at a time. A little bit of music would be nice for them.
right,
There's so many small things that maybe people throughout the day, take for granted. But, just those little small normalcy kind of things is, kind of the easiest thing that you can do.
right,
We do have events throughout the year. Coming out to the events, you'll be able to, hopefully, if the kid's feeling well enough, they'll be at the event. Or the fact that knowing that you were able to be a part of it and actually make one of their wishes or their dreams come true. I mean, it really is very uplifting. And when we were there this past weekend, I don't think, honestly, there was one person in there that wasn't crying, listening to the parent tell you, how their story went, watching their kid from the time they found out to the to the end of it. I don't think there was one person in there that wasn't crying
hmm
and wasn't raring to go. It really amps you up for the next coming year.
right. Well, and that's very
So,
empowering, because you feel uplifted and you feel like you did something good. you know?
Exactly.
Hmm.
But and on the opposite end, you're doing good, and I tell people all the time, it's kind of like, where else can you go? You do a good deed for the day, and then you get to get a little paranormal in at the same time.
Right.
So you you get the history of these awesome places, places that you might have never gone to before,
Hmm.
and you're helping a kid or a family at the same time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, um, it's a unique approach, I have to say, but it's one that actually, works because there is a big interest right now in the paranormal. And, I think that I might talk to you later on. Maybe we can do some crossovers. So that I would like to definitely help out with this. So,
Sounds
anyways,
great.
all right. All right, well, we're getting close here to the time for the show to end, or our interview to end. But anyway, um, I'm trying to think of. You said that in the beginning that you had one instant where you thought that you encountered a demon or an evil entity or something that had
Right.
evil intent. Where was that, and what did you experience?
We were in a jail in, I think it's Jacksonville, Florida area. I don't remember the name of the jail offhand. I think it was called Gilchrist Jail. We've been there quite a few times, and this is honestly one of the only places that I'd ever been in that kind of got like you walk through a door and you feel like you got pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
Like something was like, stop, you're not coming in here. It wasn't like, no, like you can't come in. It was like, no, you're staying there. You're not coming in here. So it was like one of the only places that I freaked myself out about. So we were going, it's a two-story, and back in them days, I've been in a couple jails here in Florida that have been, they're out of business or whatever. Nobody's been in them for a while. And they always seem to be like two stories, maybe 12, 13 cells, period. So they build like a apartment or something like that attached to the jail so that the sheriff can live there with his family
Mm-hmm.
while they have the jail or while they're working the jail. So in this particular one, you walk in, there's a couple cells on your right side, I believe, and then in front of you, and then you go up a small set of stairs, and then there's like only two rooms where like they could play cards or like their like fun time room or whatever. I don't even know what they call them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side was the cells again. So I went in there and went upstairs. So that room where they would have played cards or something like that, it was a really strong smell of sulfur. And it was like, why would that be there? Like the place is closed down, nobody's in there.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of just got there so that, it wasn't a person or anything coming out of a person. Um, so I don't know where the smell came from, but then downstairs, and that smell kind of moved around in the jail. It didn't stay in that one spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then downstairs in the adjoining apartment, there's a room in the back. And I don't know why, but that room was always darker than night. It was darker than anything else. And that was the room when I tried to walk in, I got that pushed back kind of feeling. But then I got this really putrid smell of like rotting meat. And it's like, where does that come from? Where does that smell from? I didn't have any like, it was like just a block. Like, you walk into a room, but you couldn't go in it. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like I got rushed by anything or anything like really scared me or anything like that. I didn't get touched or anything like that. But just those smells were what makes me think there might have been something demonic in the building.
Yeah, and I've heard other people, give those kind of accounts where they smell sulfur or rotting meat, and sometimes they do get touched. Usually it's scratches, and a lot of the reports it's three scratches, which, some people will say is mocking of the Trinity, things of that nature. Um,
Correct.
have you had any kind of experiences where you've been touched or scratched or anything of that nature?
Honestly, no, I haven't. In the whole time that I've done this, I've never been scratched. I actually was in a room in another jail, and the man that was with me, I got a real big whiff of like flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And he got scratched like 2 seconds after I said, "Oh my God, I smell flowers in here." He got scratched on the back of the neck.
Oh, wow.
And he's actually an ex-Marine that was on Chris's team. So we were kind of just investigating together, and that's what happened to him. So that kind of ended the investigation right there because he got scratched, and it was a pretty good, scratch. Had 3 marks on his neck,
Mm-hmm.
and it just, we took a break after that.
That's understandable.
Right. But yeah, it's funny because a lot of times, even in my old house, when I was laying in bed, I got this really strong smell of cigarettes. And like I've told you, I don't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So to get that kind of smell was kind of odd laying in bed. But what reminded me at the time, my ex-husband, his dad passed away literally 3-4 days before that happened. I seem to get a lot of connection through smell.
Okay. And do you think it's some sort of memory or something that's familiar to them, and that's how they're kind of conveying they're there to you?
I think so. I think that it might be one of the easiest ways for them to communicate with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it comes to me.
Okay. That's unusual, and which that's kind of hard to record. I mean, you can't really,
No, that's, personal experience. And you might just hear me on a recorder say, "Oh my God, what's that smell?"
Right. Well, that's interesting, though. I mean, but do you hear that quite a bit, that people walk into areas and they'll start getting a smell of something like flowers, and sometimes it's associated with somebody that lived in the house, and the smell shouldn't be there anymore, but it usually indicates their presence is still there.
Right. And I mean, to be in a jail, this was Clay County, the one that the guy got scratched and I smelled the flowers. But it's like, really, you're in a jail. And I mean, it's stagnant, and there all it is concrete and then the metal, bars.
Right.
So why would I get a whiff of flowers?
Right.
I mean, I kind of figure the flowers maybe, because always at a funeral there's lots of flowers.
Mm-hmm.
But that's obviously not going to be their fondest memory, But I don't know why it comes across like it does. And like I said, there's nothing in the building, so it's kind of really odd that flowers would come out.
Right.
They don't. It's not a working place, so there's not flowers outside. It's not like there's a rose garden outside. So it's a really odd thing to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that confirms to you that there's something going on, and I think, for me, like with cryptozoology and even the paranormal, really you're getting into it for your own confirmation. For me, I was always fascinated with these things, and it was more confirmation for me than anything
Right.
else. If I could prove anything, that's great, but just going out there to confirm that what what I've seen or read or whatever is actually real and it's right there in front of me, is really why I went out there. And I think a lot of us are into it because that's our main goal, is just to prove it to ourselves that, hey, what I experienced as a kid, for you, there's something to it. And, for me, it was what I read and what I looked into. I've had a few things when I was younger, but for me, it was whatever I read and things like that. It was confirming for me, okay, well, there's truth to it. And I can't deny what my own eyes see or my own ears or nose smells. There's something to this. And because it's, again, we get back to the divides within the groups. That's the connection right there. We're all in this because we want to validate for ourselves that there's something to this. And I think really I got tired of just caring about what other people thought, because you're gonna have people that are gonna look at you, like you're insane, and that just comes with the territory. So for me, it's I validate it for me, and if I get any other stuff, that's great. That's bonus.
Yeah, I think at this point, I know for sure that paranormal and spirits and things like that exist.
Right.
Um, I know that for certain. I knew that for certain. Before that lady was in my house.
Mhm.
Um, but it's really hard to find proof, and just to share that with somebody else. Some people look at you like you're crazy, and other people are like, "Oh, that's cool."
Mhm.
I mean, I work in a nail salon, and people talk to me all day long. We've started doing paranormal tours down here in Newport Richey, and this area was basically built up in the 1900s,
Mhm.
and it's not legitimately that old, but there's still stuff going on down here.
Right.
But the people that run the city didn't want paranormal in there. But unfortunately for them, they're there.
Mhm.
And we were at one of our tours, and we had 9 buildings downtown, and we investigated all of them. We found evidence in each and every building. And I think a lot of the people were really shocked
Mhm.
that we found as much as we did. There was the one place that was kind of like our command central. It was a bar downtown. It's a bar now downtown. But back in the 1900s, it was the first feed store of Newport Richey. And then it was actually the very first fire department that burned down in 1920.
Okay.
So when we walked in, as soon as I walked in, right between where the bar and where the restroom area would have been, there's a huge freezer there. So the machinery would go, like K2 meters, whatever, would just go off because of how much electronics and stuff was there.
Mhm.
But like I told you before, I can feel it when I walk in. So when I walked in, I got this immediately chills all over my body. The hair was standing up on my arms and legs, and my heart, I don't know, I get sometimes when it comes strong, I have like a gallop or something in my heartbeat, and it feels kind of funny. So right then I knew something was standing there with me. And within 38 seconds of me turning my recorder on, I got an EVP that said, "Right now," because I was just saying, "Hey, we're here. I don't know how long we're going to be here,
Mhm.
but I'd like to hear your story. If you've got a story, I'd like to hear what you have to say." And the EVP comes out clear as day, Class A, right now. And it's a man's voice.
Wow.
And I started talking they actually etched a map of the area into the plaster of the wall,
Mhm.
which was it's everything is one story is concrete down here because of the hurricanes and
Right.
stuff. So they actually etched a map of the area, and they would use that whenever they went on calls.
Mhm.
So I'm standing there. I couldn't believe that this came back so quick. 38 seconds. It was unbelievable. A little bit later, I had the spirit box and my recorder going, and it caught two conversations going on at once, like two entities were talking, and they were so dumbfounded that I could hear them, that I could talk to them, that I could hear what they had to say.
Mhm.
And it was just I don't remember the exact words they said because it was a couple months ago, but just to hear their conversation happening right next to me, and then being able to replay it, with a recorder it was awesome. It was one of those things that I never thought I would have caught, and it was on the spirit box and on a recorder at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So it was clear.
Yeah.
But it was exciting as a find.
Well, I can imagine, and shocking too, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, some neat stuff we had when we did the tours. We had the SLS camera. I always bring my FLIR because I find some great evidence with my FLIR. We were in Tracy City, Tennessee, with the Rafe Chasers. They were doing an event, and it was we were in an auditorium. Now the area was so poor that they used to just play movies for $3 in a school auditorium, and we were sitting there, and I was standing right below the stage, looking back at where you come in. I had the FLIR, the obelisk, and my recorder going at the same time. And this lady in the back of the auditorium kept saying, I keep feeling something behind me. I keep feeling something. So I was snapping photos from like right to left with the FLIR. And the obelisk started going, and I'm like, well, can you come of you and I can actually see you. And then the obelisk come back and said, already seen. And I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. I started going back over my photos that I already taken, and literally this kid in the very back row, he had like a plaid shirt on, looks like he's got his hair parted straight down the middle of his head, blonde hair. You can see him peeking out of one of the chairs. And I was like, holy crap, this is so cool.
Right.
But I've gotten many good photos. We were in the Selma Mansion, and we were up there with Bill Reap and his team doing an event up there. Now that house was actually the house of Alan Porter, who was a general in George Washington's army.
Okay.
We were in the basement. Chris was sitting there. We had probably 6 people, and we started getting EVPs, listening to them back as quickly as we could. Somebody was talking to us that kept referring to himself as the general. So I started going with the FLIR and taking pictures, and then sure as heck, right between 2 living people, you see this very tall, thin man with a really high collar. He had like a long neck, but a really high collar, stiff collar. And you could see his hair. And you could see, actually, while he was saying like EVPs, you could see his mouth moving in the FLIR.
Oh, that's
now, I was trying to take video, but I was only getting still shots, and I can send you those too.
Okay.
The man is in purple in between the 2 living people. And when you can see his face shift in purple, he wasn't, obviously like a normal, alive human being.
Right.
And, of course, we didn't know who it was at the time, but then as you went upstairs and you walked around the house, there was like a portrait of him and his wife. And I was like, oh my God, that's the guy that I got in this photo downstairs. And I'm doing what I do with the FLIR and the obelisk, and then Chris is asking questions and getting responses by, live EVP. And it's just like, you don't have to connect the dots. I mean, it's smack dab right in front of you, and it's so blatantly obvious.
Right.
That it's like you can't deny what's going on. I actually called Bill over, and I called Paul over. I'm like, do you see what I'm seeing, like, as it's happening? So I'm like making sure that I'm not just like, I don't know, my brain's not malfunctioning in some way. And I'm like, do you see it? And they're like, yes, I see it. I can't believe it. And the fact that, like I said, at this point, I have so much evidence from the FLIR that it's amazing. It really is. Like, I can't believe I caught this stuff.
Well, yeah, and that's the great thing about that type of technology is that I think it's really opened a lot of doors for the paranormal, for things you can't see with your own eyes. And it is good, like you said, to have somebody confirm what you're seeing. I do that as well. I'll have somebody and like, okay, are you hearing that? Are you seeing that? Just to have that confirmation, because hey, your mind can play tricks on you. You don't know, and you just want to make sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's always a benefit. To have somebody else there or a group of people that can validate is going on, and especially if you're getting it live like that, and that's really cool, especially from multiple different devices, because that's really hard to
Yeah.
dispute, you know?
But that's kind of why I do it that way, because if I only have one device that's doing something, okay, it could be something. But if I have 3 or 4 devices and then I have other human beings, validating what I'm seeing and what my machinery's picking up,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't think there's any room for error at that point. Nobody's guessing.
Right.
That stuff is there.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, um, it, I think that's a benefit, and with paranormal, I think the difference though is with paranormal, a lot of these entities are coming to you. They want to interact in a lot of cases. Um, with
But that's usually what I wait for at this point.
hmm
I'm not running around a building, trying to find stuff. I'll go sit quietly in a room
hmm
and I'll listen and just like kind of calm myself to a point where they come to me.
right.
And it's kind of been easier, like an advantage. And I don't know if that's, I can go into a room and I could almost say like I meditate a little bit and sit there, and they actually come to you. They do want to talk to you.
hmm And I think that they know that they can converse with you in some fashion, that you're coming there to actually communicate with them, and they're probably looking for that. They don't get that often. I mean, most people don't know they're there. Um, so that's
Well, I kind of think that's why when we started doing it downtown, because nobody's ever been there to try to communicate with them, that they were so excited that like they almost like in their, you could hear it in their voices, like they couldn't believe that they could talk to me or that I could talk to them.
right.
It was really a neat experience as far as paranormal is concerned. I didn't just walk in the building and start talking into the air, but they were just like, oh my God, I can't believe she could talk to me.
Right. The power of technology.
For sure. But thank God we have these things. And honestly, like somebody can explain to me how they work, and I know how to use them only because I use them. But honestly, I wish I had some sort of knowledge on how these things actually do what they do.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I know how an EMF detector works, but I didn't invent any of that, and I wouldn't know the first thing about that kind of thing.
Or how it correlates. I mean, that's I think a lot of the mystery right now is how are these devices picking these things up, and really figuring out, all right, if we can figure out what kind of wavelength they're on, or things of that nature, I think we would be able to get more precise devices that can actually pick up more than what they are now. Because right now it's utilizing technology that was developed for something else, and then you find out, oh, it works over here. But finding that
Well, yeah, look
correlation.
at everybody's starting to use the SLS cameras.
hmm
Those were made to play video games with,
Yeah.
but oddly enough, somebody somewhere must have been playing a video game, and they're like, oh, I wonder why there's an extra skeletal figure, off the left. Where did that come from?
Right.
And then they started, picking up on the fact that this malfunction in the camera or, in the video game, it happens more than just, at one particular house or something like that.
Right.
And then a paranormal investigator, like, I wonder if that works in our field as well. And then poof, now we have a whole new piece of equipment,
hmm
I mean, and we got some good stuff on the SLS camera. We were in a barber shop, and I'm standing behind a barber chair, and all of a sudden, this like childlike figure is sitting at the bottom where like your feet would be.
hmm
And we got some really good EVPs in there too, like literally within 3 minutes of turning it on. And then we did an actual investigation there. We had 10 people. Really, the only people that were experienced investigators was me and Chris.
hmm
And sitting there, a girl in the middle of the investigation was getting so affected that she started vomiting.
Wow.
Like it was freaking her out so bad. But when we were looking at the SLS was actually showing a figure sitting between her and her husband.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't know if the entity that was there was affecting her like that, or if it was just the fact that she was getting herself freaked out.
Right.
And, she lost her cookies. I don't really know, that whole situation. I was there. I was standing there through the whole thing. But it was, and I've heard of people, that happening before. So it wasn't like a big, like, oh my God, but it was like, geez, and really both Chris and I was like, eventually, do you want to step out for a minute? Because if it was the entity that was causing, that kind of physical thing for her, then removing her from the situation would probably be the best thing to do.
Yeah, you don't want things to progress or get worse.
Right.
Yeah, I
So
totally.
do you guys, when you go like on Bigfoot things, do you guys bring FLIRs with you for that?
I actually have a Seek camera, which is very similar to a FLIR. It plugs into my phone, and I
Oh, okay.
kind of downsized a lot in my equipment I bring because used to bring like tons of gear, and I found okay, I can bring an audio recorder. I have adapted a camera. It's basically a multi-spectrum camera, but I use it as a night vision camera with an IR light, and then I have my little Seek camera that I plug into my phone. That I usually bring with me, and that gets me everything I need as far as being able to go out there and collect evidence. Because I can take pictures with the
Do you
camera.
have anything that you would think or be the biggest piece of what you would think would be like concrete evidence of there being Bigfoot?
Of my own research or just in general?
No, of your own stuff, things that you've personally been able to experience.
Um, as far as what I've collected, it's mostly audio recordings, and I've gotten like these roaring sounds collected in Tennessee, and we were out in the cemetery area, and all of a sudden we heard these guttural roars from the valley, and this went on for like 30 minutes or so, and there were several times that we went out to there, and it would just start up. And usually we're doing calls and things, and I have several recordings of these roaring sounds that we captured. Captured screams, wood knocks, all kinds of different things. But most of what I've gotten is audio in nature. Um, when I did have my sighting,
Do you live in Tennessee?
no, I live in Indiana. I'm originally from Virginia, but I would go out because a lot of the people I knew that were into this were actually in Tennessee and Kentucky. So I would venture out there and set up camp, and I had a number of different things occur. But you're not always prepared. I think that's the one thing with this is a lot of the encounters are really split second, and if you're not right there ready, you've missed it. So it's
Yeah, that's
that's
for sure.
yeah, that's one of the problems with this is
Because I
like
mean, here we had there's a guy that lives here in Florida, which you've probably heard him or know him, Robert Robinson.
that sounds familiar.
Um, he's he's done some speaking things, for PKC. We have a place up here. It's in the city or town of Brooksville.
Hmm.
It's about an hour and a half from where I live. But he was saying, and I've heard from a couple other people, that Florida seems to be one of those kind of hot spots for looking for Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of
But I
sightings
don't
in
know.
Florida. Pennsylvania is another one that's got a lot of sightings. Ohio, Kentucky, even Indiana. Southern Indiana has a lot of activity. But yeah, I think Florida is fourth for sighting reports. So it's pretty high up there as
Huh.
far as the number of sightings that occur. Pennsylvania, I think, is pretty high too. I think that's third. So yeah, they're pretty spread out. Of course, there's different theories, and some people think they're different species and stuff like that. But I kind of tend to think that it's all one thing, one
I would
species.
think like different families, like that maybe they're out there as different family units, you know?
Right, and it's like people. I mean, we all look different. We don't look the same. So, I mean, you're gonna see a Bigfoot and think, okay, well, that's how they all look. It's not. They're not gonna look like that. I've heard so many different descriptions that I think it's just like people. We all, come from different ethnicities and things of that nature. So, I mean, I think they're the same way. It's just they look different. And it could be from different
Yeah.
gene lines.
Well, in different areas, they might need to, I'm trying to think of a word like that. They would evolve in different ways. Like if they're in Pennsylvania, they may need a thicker coat than what they need here in Florida.
Right.
So they might appear different, less or more hair, or, darker, lighter in color.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they call them the skunk ape.
That's just my thought. I really don't know much about that.
Right. Well, there's some truth to that, and I think they call them the skunk ape for a reason. I mean, they're out in the heat of Florida, and I've been to Florida, and good God.
Living in the elements and all that.
Huh?
Definitely. I said out there living in the elements and whatnot. I mean, here they'd be living in the swamp, and it couldn't be a very nice life living out there, like that. Not living at home and having a shower and that kind of thing.
Yep. So I mean, yeah, I don't really subscribe to any particular point of view. I mean, people ask me, what do you think they are? And I say, I don't know, because I really don't. I mean, I've seen them, I've had experiences, but that doesn't mean that I'm an expert. I don't believe there's any expert in, these fields, because there's so many unknowns still.
Correct.
And,
I feel the same way. I mean, it's really hard to be an expert in something that you're basically guessing at. It's your best educated guess.
Right. And I think even scientists, they're an expert in their field, and they can bring that to this, but, and even to the paranormal side, but that doesn't mean they know enough in this area, and it comes down to speculation. It's a lot of speculation and a little bit of fact and theory. We just don't know enough. And I think that's the same way with paranormal. I've gone out, I've done paranormal research, and I've had a few encounters, experiences over the years, but I think a lot of it is just, your own speculation and what you're perceiving, and coming to a conclusion, which really is a hypothesis on what you're experiencing. So, yeah, I think once we get some concrete evidence that, can't be disputed in any way, shape, or form, and what you're doing, I think, is the best way to do it, I think we'll get more answers. And, yeah, I think that's all there is to it. Coming up with ways that you can't dispute what you're experiencing and saying, look, I've got multiple devices recording from different ways, audio, video, whatever, and they all correlate with what we were experiencing, and they show what we were experiencing and give you audio. So it gets harder and harder to dispute. And I think that's why you have a lot more people getting into this, and cryptozoology is there's more evidence. Now, a lot of the general public, they don't know about that. They sit there and think that the only thing that Bigfoot has is the Patterson-Gimlin footage from 1967, and it's like, oh, no, there's a lot more to it than that. And I think it's the same way with paranormal research, is they say, oh, you've got a few, orb photos and, things that are just misconstrued as EVPs, and it's like, no, I've heard things, in audio and seen images that can't be disputed, that there was something there that was captured. So I think there's a lack of knowledge.
I think that the general public, doesn't really know. And at this point, there's so many of us going, instead of me going on like family vacations every year or whatever, I take these little mini expeditions to, like, who wants to go to a prison that hasn't been used in the last, 100 years, or to go to an old insane asylum that's been sitting there for 18 years. But like when you go to these places and all of a sudden you hear this scream from somewhere that nobody could possibly have made,
Mm-hmm.
or you only hear that in one room in the whole building. And the general public isn't going to those places. It's people like me that want to go to those places.
Mm-hmm.
And how you can have so many people that are just like me that went and they get like this, that scream or something like that, and they capture it on a recorder or what have you, the general public. And, I don't know about, you guys in my family alone, like my mom doesn't believe in the paranormal at all.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom and my stepdad are like, oh, I think you're nuts. Like, why would you waste your time, not go to work and go to these places and look for that kind of thing, these dark, dingy, scary kind of vacations or whatever. But then on the other hand, my father, he thinks it's all cool.
Right.
So their age group of people weren't doing the things that we're doing. So, all of it's still fairly new. I think it's still fairly in its infancy for the most part. But, anybody that's out there that really claims that they're an expert, I think they might have lost their marbles somewhere along the line.
I agree.
Because if you can't, like that. I mean, I've gone to places and actually asked questions like, what was it like crossing over? What's it like where you are now?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to figure out or get some sort of answer. And, I might get an answer from, some place that I'm at, but I can ask the same exact question and get a completely different answer somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So, how people are, how they perceive life and death and, just even perceiving their environment and everything, we might never actually get like a concrete answer
Right.
for any of this stuff.
Well,
But it's still fun looking.
well, maybe that's for the best in a lot of ways. Because I think mystery
I've
to life is a good
great
thing.
relationships doing it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
But
off.
like you said, people and everything everywhere, all that stuff is different. My perception of life and what's good and pretty might be different from somebody else's. And that's why it's going to be one of those like super hard kind of things to prove.
Well, and I think, you hit the nail on the head with your family. I've gone through that myself with this and even paranormal investigation is that, they're like, you're crazy. And then I have other ones that think it's cool. But there's a stigma. And a lot of people will tell me, off the record that they've had experiences. They've seen something, they've heard something, whether it's in the paranormal realm or, with Bigfoot or whatever. But they won't come forward and really confess it because they don't want to be looked at as being crazy or they might think that their job might be threatened. So I think there's still a stigma there that a lot of people are just afraid to really speak their mind about how they really feel about it.
Yeah, I can agree with you with that one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants it. And that's the same thing as us. And I think that's why, throughout time, I've kind of, changed my strategy as far as investigating is concerned to more like, okay, well, this is my photo. What do you think about what I think I see? Or what do you think when you look at it?
Right.
And a lot of it's turned into that kind of thing. Or when I am investigating, I will, ask other people at that precise moment, what do you think about this? Because my perceptions might be different than theirs, but if you get 3 or 4 people that all have the same kind of experience or think the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
then somewhere along the line, the rationality of it in your own brain, you have to stop and think that if we're all seeing it, we're all hearing it, we're all experiencing it,
Mm-hmm.
then it is real. It really is there.
And I'll say over the years from doing this, and I'm sure it's with you as well, you grow a really thick skin because you get used to the ridicule and people putting you down or putting what you put out there down, and you have to grow a thick skin or you're not going to make it. But yeah, over the years I've just kind of like, all right, well, if you don't agree, that's fine. I don't care.
Yep. Yep, exactly. It's like, you can criticize what I and you can't make them feel whatever you felt when you were there.
Right.
So it's like, you can criticize me all you want. I know what I felt. I know what I see. And if you don't see it that way, that's fine. I'm sorry that you don't get to see it like I see, because I get to see it like a little kid, perceives Christmas. It's more
Right.
like it's a happy and like, oh, how cool kind of thing for me, instead of you saying, oh, well, yeah, I don't see nothing, or, you're crazy, whatever.
Well,
Let me be crazy then. I'm good. I'm happy with that.
well, and a lot of the critics, though, a lot of the people that do that, they wouldn't go into, even half the places that you go into, or, into woods at night, like I would. They,
Very true.
yeah, they're sitting there from their armchair going, "Oh, that's BS," and it's like, really? Well, why don't you go out there with me? Oh no, I'm good. I'm good. They want to
I
just
don't know. I don't know if I would want to go out in the middle of the woods either. I guess, if there were more people with me,
right.
I'd be okay with that. But I don't know if I could do that by
Yeah,
myself.
I go out sometimes
Um,
by myself, and I get flack from even other Bigfooters are like, you really shouldn't do that. I'm like, but sometimes that leads to me having encounters. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it probably works, just like it does with us. If we're out and we're at one of those places, sometimes you'll go and like whatever it is that's there doesn't want to talk to, a woman, or doesn't want to talk to a man, and the other person might get a little bit more of a response.
hmm
But I found, in some places, it's like if you have 20 people, even as a living human being, if you walk into a room and 20 people walk behind you, walk in after you, and they all have video cameras and recorders and, whatever, it's intimidating.
yeah,
Walking into a room with 20 people is intimidating. Everybody's eyes are all of a sudden looking at you. So, like, I don't know. I try to, the kind of experiences that I have in life, I try to bring to those places.
hmm
And like, we're going to this jail in 2 weeks. It's in Jasper, Hamilton County, Jasper, Florida.
okay.
We've been there quite a few times, and we actually sleep in the jail.
hmm
And I think that we're lucky that we're able to do that, because I mean, hopefully this weekend we're going to have enough people to fill up the whole jail by people sleeping in the cells. And it's like, for me, it's kind of crazy, because it was like probably the second place that I investigated ever. And there's, I think, 16 jail cells there. And we've got some like really crazy kind of evidence there. There was this one place in the jail, they call it the drunk tank. And back in the day, they were segregated.
hmm
So, you have the black cells and the white cells. There's a medical cell, and then there's a woman's cell downstairs. But the same kind of thing as the other jail I was telling you about is that they had an apartment built downstairs and off to the left.
hmm
So the apartment was built like in the 50s. But I didn't know any of the stories or whatever. Now I know that they used to build a gallows like adjacent to it, and they would hang people at this jail. So the last two legal hangings in the state of Florida were carried out at this jail in the 50s.
Oh wow.
So there's supposed to be 80 bodies buried in the backyard. They had somebody come from one of the universities with the ground penetrating radar or whatever.
Right.
And there's supposed to be 80 bodies buried back there.
Wow.
But one of the craziest things that happened to me happened in that particular jail. I was sitting upstairs with the same guy I told you about when I smelt the flowers and he got scratched.
hmm
Same guy. I was sitting on one of the bunks, and there was another girl to the left of me on a bottom bunk just sitting there. And then Adam was sitting across from me where the toilet would have been. And we're in the drunk tank in the very front of the jail. So all of a sudden, this huge, I mean, absolutely huge shadow came into the room, crossed in between me, Adam, and this girl. And I'm sitting there, and all I saw was like this big waft of a shadow walk in the room. but it walked in the room like it owned the place. It wasn't like a timid, I would have assumed it would have been like a guard or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he walked in, all the machinery that was sitting on the floor, the K2s, there was 3 K2 meters, there was 2 meters, and I don't know what else was on the floor because all I had at the time was a recorder and a K2.
Mm-hmm.
So all that stuff went off at once. So everybody kind of stopped in their tracks, and then Adam looked at me and he's like, "What just happened?" And I was like, "I don't know, this huge shadow just walked into the room and like right in." And he goes, no, that's good. He's like, "That's one of the things that people say happens here." And I said, he asked me, did it walk in, like timidly? I said, no, it kind of like came in like it owned the place, like gangbusters, just like walked in like, hey, whatever. And then I started getting this really weird sensation over like the top of my head and my face that was kind of like you just walked into a whole gob of spider webs. And obviously we've been in, we were in that room and all around that jail for like the 2 days before that. So no, there was no cobwebs or anything. The actual place is actually very clean.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that couldn't have happened, And then my lips started kind of feeling numb. So Adam kind of was like, "Are you touching Nicole?" And then it was like, "If you're touching her, make the equipment go off." And then everything in the room lit up, bells going off, everything all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of crazy that happened. And then at another time, Chris and his whole team were there. Oh, no, actually, when I was sitting there, we were talking about the spider webs on my face and everything. And all of a sudden, Chris came running up the stairs. Adam, we need you downstairs. Jill's freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
So right below where I was sitting, a friend of theirs that is a psychic was in the building downstairs, but directly underneath where I was sitting. And she was having like a anxiety kind of attack, but like they wanted a couple men to pick her up and get her out of the building. And that's what happened. They ran downstairs, picked her up and removed her from the building. But it was really weird. She like, I don't know what came over me or what happened. And I don't know if what was happening to me upstairs was correlating with her downstairs.
Right.
I don't know if the energy could work that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like it did, because the more crap that was happening in that little tiny room, there was stuff happening right downstairs too. So to the day, because it's like 4.5, almost 5 years, I tell Chris, I'm like, I hate you right now because you like totally ruined everything that was happening to me. Like some of the coolest stuff that ever has happened to me that night. And I was like, you running into the room just killed it. So it's kind of interesting because we're going back there, and now we've been there. I used to like kind of joke around like that's like our second home, because we used to go there like once every 2 months, and we're lucky enough, like I said, that she allows us to actually sleep at the location.
Mm-hmm.
So we would bring our kids up there and everything. There was nothing ever like scary or anything like that happened, just weird stuff.
Right.
So him and his team were there, and they were all standing still. We have an actual video of people made and everything, and everybody was standing still, and then this really huge bang just happens for no reason, and everybody's like oh my God. And you can see, like I said on the video, nobody's moving, and it was a very loud metallic bang. And they did find a door that was like a utility closet that if you slammed the door, you could kind of get the sound,
Mm-hmm.
but they never actually figured out what made that noise that night.
Wow. Yeah, that's the stuff is really
So
cool. I mean, that's the stuff I love, is when you have stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, it really is. And, we're going back there this week, so I'm hoping that, something more will happen. I mean, I've really never been disappointed with this place. I was actually in the kitchen area, like I said, that was built in the fridge, and one of my friends kept saying they keep seeing a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was using the obelisk, and I didn't have anything but the obelisk then. It was kind of when I started doing more paranormal stuff. And I got some really cool confirmation because I was like, it always brings up certain words, was like the soil or whatever. And then I started talking to a priest using the obelisk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why a priest would be there, obviously they're going to, give their last rites to somebody or whatever, but the priest might be there a heck of a lot more than I know anything about.
Right.
So I was talking to him actually in the kitchen, and then, me with the questions, I'm like, well, is Jesus real? And then the obelisk said, son, S-O-N, instead of S-U-N.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool.
Right.
And then I asked, is God real? And then it said, is light, So, as a kid growing up, it was always like, God's always around you. So for God is the light and Jesus is the sun. So how this machine that's sitting there would know how to spell it according to what I was asking
Right.
was actually another really real, like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's confirming, especially because it's really random. I mean, you're saying one thing and you're getting it from the box, and that's pulling from random stuff. So it's not like it could have come up with anything basically, and it came up with stuff that correlates with what you're
Right.
asking, and I think that's really cool.
Exactly what I was saying and exactly what I was asking. And it really caught me because, like I said, for it to say, it just said sun, but spelled it S-U-N, but it didn't.
Right.
It said S-O-N, exactly what I was asking. So I don't, again, it was like, oh my God, that was something so cool. It was a personal experience. I didn't have any else that was like, I didn't have the recorder, a video camera, and all that kind of stuff going on at the same time. So it's just chalked up to a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely, something that's ingrained in my brain. And it's definitely, it happened there at the same place I'm going back to. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a really cool weekend.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you get from there. And it's been great this evening, and we have gone way over, by the way. I would love to have you back on because this has all been very fascinating for me, and I'm sure for the people listening too. But yeah.
Awesome. Anytime.
Okay. Well, that sounds great.
I hope so.
And we'll definitely be, if you can send me those links and the pictures and stuff like that, and definitely for the Paranormal Kicks Cancer, I definitely like some information for that, and I will be promoting that because I think that's a great cause. But I am glad that you came on tonight. This has been a great conversation with you. You have a lot of interesting stuff that's happened to you. Hey, I hope to experience some of that stuff when, years down the road. Who knows? But yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have to have you back on again. Okay?
Sounds great to me. Just hit me up and we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and run the ending of Monkey Man. His little foray into the Fact or Fiction Fest. And, yeah, we'll head out and close off with you, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Hang with me. And here's the monkey. There we go. All right, guys, that was Monkey Man and his interviews with people at Fact or Fiction Fest. Just kind of getting the word out that he exists, and, he's tired of Bigfoot stealing all the thunder. Anyway, if you're watching live or if you're watching the recorded show for the next week, and we are on at this is September 15th, by the way, 2019. Since this week, especially Friday, they're going to be doing the raid of Area 51. We'll see how that goes. We're going to be doing a little giveaway of some keychains. Of course, you can't really see them because they're green, and I got a green screen. But they're little aliens, blue and red-eyed aliens. I have 12 for the giveaway. And the way that this will work is if you subscribe to our channel, like the video, and then comment, "I want a keychain," you will be entered in to win one of the keychains. That's going to be running for this week. So go ahead and comment. That's even on the live broadcast here, and then when the recorded show goes up for that week, it also counts for that. So yeah, if you want an alien keychain to commemorate people doing stupid things this week in the area of UFOlogy, have at it. Put your, like I said, like the video, subscribe, and then comment, "I want a keychain," and you'll be entered in to win one. All right, so yeah, I wish everybody luck that is going out there on the 20th. Yeah, might never see you again. All right, so anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great week, and yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching. Bye.